Okay, so I want to go over how to make an experiment in Superlab. We'll do a very simple experiment to start off with. We'll be doing one called a lexical decision-making task, in which participants are asked to distinguish whether or not something they see in front of them is a word or a non-word. So we're going to go through every step of the creation of this. So we'll actually make the stimuli, and then we'll upload it into Superlab, and then go over how that layout and how that hierarchy works, and how Superlab reads what you're doing, and how it actually organizes the data, collects it, and shows it, and all that stuff. So I'm starting off in R, where I'm going to be doing my data generation. So one thing about this, and without getting into too much detail, is we're doing this as just a demonstration to show how we can make an experiment, we can make up words, all these things. Now, in actuality, doing an experiment like this would require us to spend a lot of time thinking about what stimuli we're going to be using. So talking about non-words, are they going to be words that are pronounceable? Are they going to be words that are actually readable? So on and so forth. So there are databases out there that will actually give you just thousands of non-words, but to kind of not really do that too much, we'll just go in R and we'll do something like that. So I'm going to use a package called Stringer, and this has a built-in library called words. So you'll see if I just say words, it's going to give me all these words on the top right, showing me what we're actually looking at. Now, I only want a few of these, and I want it to be random, because if I pick words out specifically, then that introduces some level of bias, because why am I choosing it? Now, what I would probably say is a good idea is that in this case, I want to have words that are just the same amount of letters all across. I don't want to have words that are 6 letters and then 3 letters and then 7 letters and then the anomaly that's 10 letters. I don't want that. So we're just going to make it just 5-letter words. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to make this and just call this word list, and then I'm going to save this as a variable, and I'm going to say this is going to be equal to, I want to only match the strings that fit this pattern. So again, do not worry about the actual architecture of this, but basically what I'm telling R is I want you to find words that are 5 characters in length. So this is saying that this B is a boundary, and this W is just a word character, so there's no digits there, just kind of any words that you're looking for, so any letters rather, and this is another boundary. So if you think about it this way, it's saying I want to find where there's 5 digits that are preceded by a 5, and then followed by a 5, followed by a space afterwards, I'm sorry. So if I do this, oh, got to do this first, sorry. I have to say, let's call this words list. And we're going to say, actually, no, we just do this. Never mind. I'm sorry. Words, and then we do that. All right. So now if we check what words list is, we have all of these. We have all these things now, right? So it matched all the ones that are there, and that's what I want to see now. So then, if I say okay, so what I did there is what it does is it's returning to us a list of everything that we just got. That's why it's showing us, almost 1,000 things, and some that aren't actually filled in, because it's saying that in a list data structure, it's going to be showing us all that stuff. So in my new words list, now I have all these 5-letter words. So that's exactly what I want. Perfect. So now what I'll do is now I'm going to sample from those words. So I'm going to say, I'm going to call this again. And remember, the good thing about R is that everything can be self-referential. So I'm going to say, okay, so from this list, why don't you take out, we'll do 15. We'll make it somewhat easy. And then we're going to say don't replace them. I don't want to have duplicates in here. Okay, so now if I call words list again, I'm going to get these over here. That looks fine to me, right? These all look okay. So now what I want to do is now I'm going to have a non-words list. Now, this might not actually work out the way that I want it to, but I kind of just want to see if I can. So I want to do something where I'm going to replace the strings. So I'm going to say in words list, right? Why don't you get rid of the first two letters and then replace that with, we'll just do sample letters, and then we'll say 1. Okay, and I can't find letters. That's perfect. Okay, so we probably don't want that, right? Because we want to make sure that we have to keep. Remember, we have to keep the same length. And now it's just making everything just I. So I don't really want this anymore. So I'm going to get rid of it. And I'm going to say, what if I just say with HA? Now, what you're going to see is we're going to run into a problem because that's actually very funny. Okay, so I'm going to actually scrap this entirely. And what we just said is I'm going to use what another paper had done, where they took their word they created, or the words that they had rather, and they just swapped out letters. So we're looking at similarity here. So congruence, does that actually do anything in terms of how we look at a word and determine it's a word or not a word? So if I call my words list again, right? So we have all these words here. Now what I can do is now I can actually just swap these. So I can say non-words list. That's going to be equal to. And we'll just go over here, and then maybe we'll just say we'll do a shift. So we'll say thol. Again, we're trying to make sure that we're keeping some things. We're keeping some things where they could be, or at least a word that you could actually say, right? So of course, I'm now second guessing everything I know about words in terms of whether or not things are actually words and words or not. Then we'll do one more where now we'll just say maybe like O part. Okay. Maybe a comma over here. All right, so then that's good. I want to make sure now that everything I have is of the same. Look at me, I'm cutting corners here. Okay, what have we missed? One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Oh, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, I didn't do anything for issue. Okay, so let's see. Issue. How about Ashu? Because I'm typing. So Ashu, speak, and then nothing for speak either. And then we'll just do for that, we'll do a peak. And you see that it's not as easy as just, moving one letter over, because then you run into the risk of, okay, can you actually say it, so on and so forth. So then, oh boy. See, I do this for a reason, to show you that it's very, very easy to make a mistake. And it's okay, because you're gonna make mistakes, and that's completely fine. Then we're gonna run back up, and then now we'll check it, and then we should be, okay, cool. So now we should be okay. So with these two lists, now I'm gonna write this to a text file. I'll write to a CSV, I'll write to a text file actually. So I'm gonna say, so this is write table. Before I write it, I'm gonna actually make it into a vector to get it. So we'll just call this LDT, so lexical decision task. And then we're gonna say that this is equal to, this will be our words list and our non-words list. Okay, and then just to make sure that LDT actually equals that, we'll do this. And we have it over there, perfect, that's wonderful. So then we're gonna say LDT, and we're gonna call this LDT.txt. Okay, now this is gonna save into another folder that I have. So I'm going to just, actually it doesn't really matter. Okay, so now we have that saved. So now what I'll do is now I'm gonna go into Superlab. I'll bring Superlab up, and that way you can see what we do there. Actually, yeah, okay. Okay, so in Superlab, we have blocks, we have trials, we have events. Everything here is in a hierarchy. In other words, blocks are linked to trials, which are linked to events, but whatever is in blocks is essentially linked to events. In blocks, via block 1 and block 2, block 1 will run before block 2, trial 1, trial 2, so on and so forth. Now in events, we don't really label events numerically by saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because you want to make sure that you know what's happening in your experiment, as opposed to just seeing numbers and knowing that, oh yeah, 4 is when I show a fixation cross. We don't really do that, or I don't really do that, right? So what I would say is it's better to just label everything. So before I actually get into the Superlab part, I'm playing around with something where it's a neat way of visualizing things. So what I have here, and just to kind of go over to it, so a block is linked to a trial, which is linked to an event. And we're making a lexical decision task, which again is what I said before, about is a word or is it a non-word? So basically, in this case, just keep thinking that blue is block, green is trial, and red is event. So we're gonna have instructions as a block, instructions as a trial, and instructions as an event. Nothing really too complex there. In other words, I wanna know that my block is called instructions. Therefore, if I'm doing any kind of practicing, I don't need to keep seeing instructions over and over and over again. I can just kind of put it to the side. And the instructions are usually just exactly what they are. It says, you know, welcome to the lab. In the experiment, you're gonna be doing this thing or this thing. Very, very self-explanatory. We will go over that as well. Then we go into our block. So you can call it experimental block, you can call it block 1, you can call it really whatever you'd like. Then we have experimental trials, and again, these are linked to the blocks. And then in the trials, this is what the participant is actually going to be doing. This is what's happening the whole time. So they're going to see a fixation cross, they're going to see a word or a non-word, and they'll have a response. And they'll keep doing this until we've exhausted our list, or we have just figured we've tortured them enough by making them look at words and non-words. So assuming that we have 30 stimuli, which we do, 15 words and 15 non-words, this is what the events look like broken down even further. So again, we have fixation cross, the word or non-word, and then the response. The fixation cross is going to be just a cross in the middle of the screen. Then a word or non-word presentation. See over here, it's gold. It actually should say RALP, right? So gold or RALP. This is shown 30 times still. That's all the words that we have, but it's shown in something that we call counterbalancing, or we show it randomized. In other words, I shouldn't show everybody word, 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 non-word, 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 non-word. Because then they're gonna get used to it. There's an order effect going on over there, and they're gonna understand if I saw 10 words, I'm probably gonna see another word next. If I see a non-word, they probably will say, oh, okay, now I'm gonna just look for the non-words. And then the response, word or non-word, this will be bound to 2 keys. They'll press, so they'll say word or non-word question mark, and they'll say, oh yeah, that's a word, but that's a non-word. And then this is all, again, this is always going to be, each are shown 30 times. So that's 90 presentations on the screen. And that's provided we don't include a filler task or distractor, or that we're not repeating tasks. So that's the general layout of how Superlab works. And then we'll go back into to Superlab so you can see how we set that up. Okay, so again, we have the blocks, the trials, and the events. So I'm using a Mac for this, so I'll just say the keys as I'm doing it. So Command N will bring up a new block for us, and I'm going to call this one instructions, and then I'll make a new one over here. It's going into my my other monitor, so I'm just dragging it back up. Instructions again, and then we'll go over here, and then surprise, surprise, instructions again. Now I want block 1. Then I would like, we'll just say experimental. Over here, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to hit Control M, that's control many, or create many new ones. And over here, I'm going to call them, oh, I guess I can't do that. That's fine. Okay. I'm going to call them fixation, stimulus, and response. So in my instructions, I'll type something like this. Now you'll notice there's a lot of options here. So it's important that you understand what the options do, what options you should really be focusing on, all these things. So just for right now, we're showing them instructions. These instructions should probably be text, right? Shouldn't be a picture. You can include pictures, but for the most part, your instructions should be text. So we're going to say event type is going to be text, and you're going to use the text that I enter below. This going to be important because we're going to change that on another thing afterwards. So we're going to say, in the following experiment, you will be shown several strings of letters. Now, again, semantically, you could probably debate this quite a bit about the language you use to describe the experiment. If I say I'm going to show you words, then, or non-words, then how do I say that? You're going to see several words. Some of them will be real, some of them will be fake, all these things. So what I'm going to say is, even over here, now I'm thinking about this string is going to make people confused. So we're going to say, in the following experiment, you will see several presentations of words and word-like text. If you think the word is a real word, press A. If you think the word is a non-word, press L. When you are ready to begin, press space. Okay. Really to the point. Now what I'm going to do is now I will preview it, and you're going to see that for some strange reason it puts everything to the left. I don't really want that. It's going to look really, really weird. So what I do is I change the settings of the text wrap. So I go into the settings and I say, all right, I want you to position this, but I want you to just kind of cap your text wrapping at 1,000. We do that, and then, oh gosh, it still doesn't like me. Most of the experiments I make are on a PC, actually, kind of ironically. So we will have to change that a little bit. So let's see, so settings. And again, this is something we kind of just, we play around with, because it is in the middle, that is true. But first we have to see kind of how big this screen is. So it's stopping at 1,000, which is okay, but I want it to not ever do this again. So let's go back to settings, and let's just see what happens if I say text wrap at screen edge. Now, I don't like that. We'll figure it out, okay? Because I'll be here for 20 minutes trying to figure out how it makes sense to me to look at. So we have our instructions now, that's done. So let's hit play and see what happens. We hit play. We don't want to save any collected data. We don't want to run anything yet. So we'll just do run and nothing happens. But, you know, I'm not really too surprised because we didn't link it to anything. So remember, blocks are linked to trials, which are linked to events, but you have to actually do that little thing and link them. So when you click on instructions, you're going to see that trials has a little checkbox. So check that off, and then instructions, check off instructions in events. Now, because I'm screen sharing, I don't know if when I actually run the experiment, it will show it, but I'm hoping that it does. So yeah, you see, so over here right now what it's doing is it's doing this thing where it's still putting everything really, really far away. I don't quite like that. So I'm going to leave it just for right now. I noticed I made a spelling error, which is not really a surprise to anybody. If you think word, okay. If you think the word is a non-word, do that. Okay, cool. So now we have our instructions, and again, their placement is strange, but that's not the point. Now we have our actual block. So this block is going to be our experimental block. We're not going to do anything with distractors or anything like that. We're just going to make a very simple experiment, and then this experimental trial will be linked to all these things. And then what it's going to do, it's going to show fixation, the stimulus, the response, then go back, and it's going to keep doing this until we've exhausted our list. And that's the cool part. We're going to have we only have one thing, or one image really, of cross or fixation cross, and then 30 text boxes, and then one question. But they know that until you've exhausted this stimulus list, keep showing yourself over and over again. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into fixation, and we're going to say text, and we're going to put a plus over here, and then when we preview it, it's going to be really, okay, cool, now that's in the middle, perfect. So that's over there, and then we're going to go to input. It's going to say, end this event and move on to the next one. And it defaults after any response from participants. So that's going to mean that as soon as you press any button, the screen's going to go on to the next thing. We don't really want that because we don't want the person having any interaction really save for their response when we ask them, is it a word or a non-word? So we're going to say after a time limit, it's going to be fixed, and we'll just say it's going to be 1,000 milliseconds. Again, with these, what you would do is you would actually look into past research, see what they've used, and then go from there, as opposed to just kind of declaring your own value. But for right now, for training purposes, this is pretty good. Okay, so we'll do that, and then we'll go to stimulus. Now, what we could do is we could pull up our list and then kind of trudge back and forth of typing it and copying it. We don't really want to do that at all. So we're going to say it's going to be a text again. And text chosen from a list. We don't have a list yet, so we're going to create a list. We're going to call this list stimuli list. Very creative of us. Okay, we're going to edit this now, and then we're going to add items to it. But in order to do that, we're going to import. So this is going to open up my file structure, and you might get a peek as to how I'm very bad at labeling things. So I think it's stored over here, and then here, and then it's going to be in LET text. All right, so we're going to learn a few things here. Usually, what I do is I use regular expression to get rid of all these things. Okay, so I'm gonna quit out of this for a second. I'm gonna go back to R because, again, I said that we're going to see the entirety of this. So I'd rather keep true to that. So this is a good example, I think. So if we go over here, I'm going to search all this, right? I want to get rid of any numbers at all, any quotation marks. So if I go to R and I go to search, it's going to have an option to actually look at regular expressions. So I want to see, show me actual quotation marks, and then show me a number. So I'm going to say replace this with just nothing. So replace all of this. So 47 things are replaced, okay? So now I want to get rid of just the quotation marks. 0 occurrences, and I believe that's because it's a special character. Nope, okay. I think, you know what it is? I think it's because when you format it over there, they do their own thing. Yeah, that's why. They do their own formatting of what the quote looks like. So then that makes everything a little terrible. So now what I want to do is I want to get rid of just the actual spaces. So we don't see any there, we don't see any there. We do see some, let's select it in our list. Show me where there's a space. Really? There we go. Okay. So I go here, and now I'm going to say just replace all these spaces with nothing. And all right, so it just took all the spaces out forever. So we don't want that. So just for right now, we'll just do this. Again, if I had, 800 words, I would obviously not advise this nor try and teach you this. But with 30 words, it's not too bad, and you get to see how humility helps you out quite a bit. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is now I will take this list. I'm going to go back into Superlab. I really hope that this is all recording. If it's not, that'd be really funny. Okay, so now I'm back in here. I'm going to change this now to my list over here. So what we do is we make sure of a few things. One, it's saying 30 items. So yes, it's going to show us 30 items. It recognizes that we have 30 items. Perfect. We'll say okay, and then it's going to show us this list. Now, you notice that we can't preview this. We can't preview it because, well, there's 30 of them, and we don't really know what that even does. So in input, again, I'm doing a time limit here. So now we'll just say, let's say 1,500. Again, just notice that, I'm literally I'm pulling out numbers from a hat and saying, yeah, we'll go for that. You don't want to do that, right? If you're trying to find something empirically, you want to make sure that you're following what's been done before, as opposed to just kind of closing your eyes and just hoping for the best, or hoping that your thing works out the way you want it to. So then we have that. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to do our response. Remember, our response is going to be that thing that says, this is going to be after a correct response. Okay, so now we're talking about feedback and correct responses. So now we say correct response, and then we'll say text, and then we'll just say word or non-word, question mark. Then again, we'll just see what it actually looks like. Okay, cool. What I'm probably going to do is I'm probably going to, just for our purposes, just maybe say A is for word. Actually, just make it easier. Do A. L. Now again, one thing to note is that you could really spend a lot of time trying to figure out whether or not calling the word A and the non-word L is conducive or actually makes any sense. What I recommend is, I haven't done it before, but what I recommend is what I've seen before at least, is to label those keys as such. So actually just put masking tape over the keyboard and just have A being replaced with word and L be replaced with non-word. This way they're not worried about other letters getting in the way of things and doing all those things, and you're just only looking at word or non-word. But we're not doing that right now because I don't have masking tape. So we're going to say edit responses. And it's going to give us these options. So this is all the things that we could use with this. We're only going to be doing keyboard single keys for right now. So we're going to have a new response, and we're going to call this one word. And this consists of pressing A. Now this is case sensitive. So if I put A and I had caps lock on, it would never register their thing. Now I want to have a new one. So I just pressed return, and nope, I didn't actually do that, sorry. So I'm gonna edit responses, make a new one, and call this one non-word. And this is gonna be pressing L and OK. There are options here where it'll wait for data to save, whether it's pressed or released. We won't do anything with that really yet. And then now we're gonna say we save this. So this is going to be, the correct response is any one or more of the following. So both of these things will be correct or accepted. Now what I can do is now I'm going to do a practice run of the experiment. Now, I really only want to see just the block to make sure that it works the way I want it to. So I'm going to hit run selected blocks only, and I already have block 1 highlighted, so it should only run block 1. Click block 1. Now, again, I'm trying to, I don't know if it's going to record the full screen. Everything is off-centered, and I hate that, but that's okay for right now, I think. But it's saying word and non-word, and notice how, or don't notice how the screen is frozen right now. It's not advancing until I do something. So in this case, what I'm doing is I'm telling it, okay, I think that was a word. So I hit A, and it goes. Heavy. Okay, yeah, that was definitely a word. Exist, yeah, that's a word, no doubt about it. Cover, again, it's a word, and we're seeing a pattern here, right? I told you before that we can't show words, word after word after word, and we didn't actually do anything about that. So what I'm gonna do now is I will go out of this. Oh, I thought I would actually. So go out of this, and we're gonna go back into the experimental, and we're gonna say this thing of list access. So it's gonna say, again, the trial uses a stimulus list that will result in 30 presentations. So randomized. Only once per experiment run, once per participant group, randomized every time the trial is presented. I'm gonna do once per participant run. Again, all these things, they warrant further discussion, but that's on a more kind of empirical basis as opposed to just a training basis or just a kind of a rote learning basis. So randomization is very, very difficult to do. Do you want everybody seeing the same randomized trial? And if you do that, does it become then non-randomized, right? So if instead of showing you 2, 3, 4, 1, instead of showing you 1, 2, 3, 4, I show you 2, 3, 4, 1, and that's my random sequence. If I show everybody 2, 3, 4, 1, hasn't it just become 1, 2, 3, 4? So there's a lot to be said about randomizing, when to randomize, how to randomize. But for the most part, for right now, this is going to be doing what we want it to do. So what we should see that if we run it, we should see that maybe it shows us a word, word, non-word, a non-word, non-word, word. Now we have 30, we have 15 from each list, so there's a possibility that we might see a similar thing that we just saw, but we're going to hope we don't. So run selected blocks only. So first it's showing me exist. Exist is a word, okay. Now it's showing me verve. Verve is not a word. It's fun to say though. House. House is a word. Grant is a word. Ashu is not a word. Fover is not a word. But you get the idea, I think. All right, so I get out of that. This is pretty much what we're looking for. So what we're gonna do now is we're going to actually run the experiment, just pop the data open really quick, and then another video, I'll go over how to interpret, how to kind of filter out what we're looking for, and then going into some Excel stuff. So now I will go to file run. I will say participant name is Dave, save collected data, run, not select the block only, but run everything rather. So run, it's gonna ask me a location to save this data in, and I'll just say we're gonna save this as test LDT, and we'll save this to, oh, okay. We'll save it to desktop. Actually, what we'll do is we'll save it to desktop in a new folder called Superlab. It's going to save there. Okay. So following, you'll see several presentations of a word and word-like text. If you think it's a real word, press A. If you think it's a non-word, press L. When you're ready to begin, press space. Again, this does not continue unless we press it. But notice how we never change these options. These options are defaulted because, again, space is not a recognized key entry from Superlab, so anything would actually do this, but if we tell them space, they're only gonna press space, hopefully. So I press space and it advances. I see the first word is pring. Pring is not a word. Opart is not a word. Which is a word. I'm not sure if anyone, I still don't know if they can see this or not. I think it was short. Joust is not a word. Issue is a word. Exist is a word. I'm just gonna stop saying what's a word and what's not a word. In the event that you can see this, it's become very awkward. Now I'm noticing that while I'm doing this, I am kind of preemptively or prematurely hitting the button. There's really no way to kind of counteract that. You could tell your participants that if they hit the button too early, it'll crash the experiment, but you shouldn't. I mean, this is one of those things that's it's important that you test these things out, because you can't just have it and then run it and then hope it goes well. So designing this, you would probably be seeing these words several times. Now, what I usually do is in experiments like this, what I'll do is I will actually, I'll just remove any I'll remove any time limit, kind of. So I don't care if it's, I don't care if it's showing it for 1,000 seconds at all, 1,000 milliseconds. I just want to see where it says, I can just press space and kind of, power through it, just to make sure that it is showing me things there. Okay, so now the experiment stops. So now what I'll do is I'm going to open up that text file in another window. So that was going to be on my desktop in the Superlab folder as a text file. I'm going to copy this, or so I thought. Okay, so I'm going to copy this. Then I'm going to go to Excel. I have to do a new share, I think. So stop sharing. Hello. Stop sharing, and then stop sharing. But then, oh my goodness. Stop sharing. Then go up here. That's okay. I'll do this. Then let me go back to this. Go back to me. Share screen. Share my Excel. Okay, cool. Right. So I'm sharing this. So you can see there's a lot of things here we don't actually need. There are options to remove those from the data analysis, or rather, the data collection. But for right now, we're not really going to worry about that. We don't need any of this stuff, so I'll just get rid of this. We don't have groups, so we don't need this at all. There's no session ID, because we didn't delineate, we didn't say anything about a session ID. I don't care what block it was or what experiment. No, I don't care about any of these either. And then I don't care about I don't really care about these either. So any of these really. What they pressed, if they pressed or released it in the correct response, we didn't say anything about correct response, and then we'll go there. Then trial answered nothing. So then over here, when you save it as a text file, instead of doing word wrap, it just thinks that you want to see everything. I don't know, everything there, and I don't. So let me have this over here. Now, what I'm going to say is, first, you're not going to have names ever. You'll have some, some number like this on Sona. So I'm just going to change all of it over there. And again, I don't even need that. So then what I'll do is I'll go down here, and I would just name this something like, let's say, 54321. Okay. So then what we have is we have all these things which are going to show us the word or non-word. And this is, again, this is determining that if they pressed A, they're saying word, L, this non-word. Then what we would do is then we would basically from this list, we determine whether or not something was correct, and then we could give it some value. That'll be in a later video, because what we'll also do is in order to do that here, we have to say, okay, pring is not a word, so then we'll put it over here, and we'll say, okay, if this thing equals not a word, then they get a 1, they get a 0, whatever it is. In Superlab, there's a way to just designate things as being correct or incorrect, which is what we did. And when we said that a correct response would be this or this, but this case, it would be saying that this particular word has a tag of non-word to it. If they press non-word and the word was a non-word, we're going to give it some value of 1 or arbitrary correct or incorrect. And then we can tally up scores that way. And over here, you're looking at reaction time. You want to see whether or not they're reacting quicker to words that they are aware of as opposed to non-words. Because think about it, if someone says vorp to you, you have to go vorp. I don't know what vorp is. And then if you know it's not a word, you kind of go on. But if someone says this or the, you immediately know what it is. So hopefully that was somewhat informative. That's an overview of how to make a lexical decision-making task in Superlab using R, Superlab, and Excel. In my next video, I will be talking about how to kind of make this experiment a little bit better. We'll probably put in a distractor task over there to show you some different things in Superlab. We'll also clean up how the data is saved. We don't really need, honestly, we're only using 3 columns out of the 1,000 they gave us. So we can filter out the columns we actually need. And then we'll go on to how to look at the data, how to analyze the data, how to get something that makes sense from this. And then we'll get into other features of Superlab, such as building a Stroop task. We can talk about variability. We can talk about displaying the words at a variable time as opposed to a fixed time. So instead of showing everything at 1,000 milliseconds, we can show everything at, let's say, 100, 300, 400, 600, evenly spaced throughout. All right, so I will stop sharing that, go back to me, and I will say thank you for watching this, and I hope it has been informative.